What are they saying about you behind closed doors? In one of my corporate roles, I facilitated the enterprise strategic talent review for a global multi-industrial organization. And it was not uncommon for senior leaders after that talent review to come and say, what are they actually saying about me behind closed doors? Now, one implication of them even asking the question is, what prevented them from getting the feedback directly from those managers? And the truth is, it's actually fairly difficult for most managers and arguably for all of us as human beings to give people direct feedback. It still is valuable, obviously, to know what one should do differently and what one should continue to do. You know, a partner I work with at a professional services firm, they talked about the most recent feedback that they had received and described it as being ho-hum. And it wasn't that it was average feedback, but it was, in their view, a missed opportunity to get very specific feedback about what they had been doing that they should continue and what they might have been doing that they might no longer do. So this notion of what's being said about me behind closed doors, I think in many ways we can categorize that feedback and those observations in three different categories. The first of which, for me, I would call vision. And you might also think that in this particular category is where you get those questions about strategic thinkers. And so quite literally, some of the questions are, how strategic is this person and how strategic can they be? Can he or she see the big picture? Can they see the patterns in the information that's available? Can they articulate a compelling vision about where we're headed? Can they balance short-term and long-term perspectives and priorities? And in a very direct way, what does he or she read? And one of the challenges about giving feedback regarding strategic thinking is that, one, we don't pause long enough to define it, so it becomes very difficult for people to really feel comfortable saying, what do you mean by that, and get some feedback in that regard. It's also very challenging too, because when we get close to defining strategic thinking, we usually end up thinking of it as something that people are born with. So that innate intellectual ability, and if we believe that, we end up categorizing people as either they have it or they don't have it. Believe me, the prospects for improving one's vision or strategic thinking are really related to how much exposure you have to data. That's why that question about what do you read becomes pretty profound. If strategic thinking has to do with how do I connect patterns of information and patterns of behavior, the foundation for that starts with what information do I have to begin with. So how broad is your reading? How broad are your strategies or your approaches to gathering information? A second category of feedback or questions I would describe as execution, and that's probably not a surprise because every organization really wants to know about your capability for driving results. So, but some of the questions behind closed doors really get framed as, I wonder how much of those results were attributable to his or her direct efforts, or did they just happen to be in the right place at the right time? So is she really driving the results? Or is she holding other people accountable for achieving those results? Is she taking responsibility for not only what goes well, but for what doesn't go well? What happens if things go awry? How flexible is she if the environment changes? She got those results this fiscal year. What happens if the climate changes going forward? Does she really have the agility to respond to things if they are unexpected? Now, one of the difficulties in giving this category of feedback, I think, is because you just have to strike this balance between how much of what I have accomplished really is a result of personal responsibility and how much is a result of assembling the resources that are available for me. If I get it too far wrong in one direction, then I come across as too self-centered. If I get it wrong too far in the opposite direction, it becomes almost as though I'm invisible and I'm more vulnerable for people saying that we would have gotten those results even without him. How do I improve on execution? It really is related to effective effort, very intentional effort, very intentional, planful pursuit of results. The third category is what I would call elevation, and essentially the elevation has to do with how capable are you at raising the capability and capacity of people around you. So some questions that come out of those talent reviews, include, is he able to make people around him better? Is he delegating appropriately? Do people actually want to join his team? What happens when people leave the team? Are they going on to things and responsibilities that are even greater or more significant? Would he actually hire people as smart or smarter than him? Because that certainly raises the overall capability of the organization. And maybe another pretty obvious question is, does he have a realistic successor? How do I get better at elevating people around me? One of it really is related to fully engaging my resources. Do I know what motivates them? Can I get them the types of assignments that push them to contribute even more discretionary effort and really focus in on how they can grow? The challenge, again, becomes organizations that are far more focused, quite frankly, on delivering short-term results than they are in investing in the development of their people resources. So overall, even if feedback is difficult to get and receive, you have to find a way of getting it. The question also becomes that if you really knew what they were saying about you behind closed doors, what would you do differently? Greg Pennington, Pennpoint Consulting Group.